Wrestling is often romanticized. You fall in love watching it as a kid and then you go chasing your dreams, working anywhere and everywhere for just hot dogs and handshakes until you finally make it big, perform in front of thousands of fans and hopefully inspire the next generation of pro wrestlers. But also, wrestling is a little bit yucky, isn't it? Body parts everywhere, sweat, just all kinds of bodily emissions, and the sights, sounds, and, well, smells of the locker room. WCPW was great, I loved it, but I'll never forget the time I stuck my head in the changing room, and the whole thing will, well, it'll stay with me for quite some time. So with that in mind, I'm Adam Wilborn from What Culture? And these are gay bastards who made wrestling gross. Number 10, the Godwins. They were pig farmers who routinely brought a bucket of slop to the ring that was filled with various waste products from catering, and according to certain shoot interviews, waste products from quite a lot of the locker room as well, depending on who was getting the slop dumped on them. That is enough to get them a place on this list, but I'm wanting to specifically focus on one of their matches from March of 1996. Go and search it out on the network. They're facing a rebooted Rockers who are coming back to inexplicably suck for some reason. But don't pay attention to the four lads. Pay attention to the little dog that the Godwins bring to the ring with them for some bloody reason that takes a shoot dump in it. The referee boots the little thing out of the ring, horrifying onlookers, but the joke was on them because they had to sit around and watch the four lads take bumps in the skid marks immediately afterwards. Number 9, Rikishi. Phil Chambers and I run the Too Cool fan club here at What Culture, and in the year 2000, pretty much anything this man did made him one of the most over guys in pro wrestling. His pièce de résistance, of course, being the stink face, where he would place his rather large buttocks around the face of an opponent who was slumped in a corner and generally use their nose to clean his arse crack. When he turned heel, it was a fate worse than death for the likes of The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and it was always guaranteed to get the biggest pop of the night. Now, the move itself was generally retired when the man himself did as well, aside from occasional appearances on indie shows or the sly nod from Nia Jax every now and again. But I still remember this move, whether he was heel or babyface, getting hit on some of the biggest people in wrestling, and I thought watching that, I would generally rather take a burning hammer every single day of the week than ever have one of these done to me. Number 8, T.L. Hopper. You couldn't move for wrestlers with gimmicks in the mid-90s. You had Freddie Joe Floyd, you had The Goon, you had Shinobi, and you had T.L. Hopper, a wrestling plumber for some reason. Pooh is really funny, so much so that T.L. Hopper on the SummerSlam 96 sort of pre-show was doing a bit of plumbing work and bit into a bit of poo to pop the old man, basically. That's it. He bit into some poo. And people wondered why the business was in the goddamn toilet. Number 7, the Nasty Boys. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about the various road stories that would easily qualify Knobs and Sags a place on the list. I'm going to stick to the stuff that happened on camera, whether it be the nasty sensations that was coming the way of the poor bastards awaiting these two lads in the ring, or just them gobbing phlegm on the camera as part of their entrance. I'm talking mainly about the pit stop, where they get some poor bastard's face. Sometimes it was turned back on them, and it was rather crowd-pleasing to see that, but for the most part, some poor kid who was earning about $3 would get his face shoved in their armpit. And not to be too disparaging towards the Nasty Boys, but they didn't look like two lads who'd have a good scrub-a-dub-dub and a spray of Lynx before they head out there. Having said that, judging by the state of some wrestling fans, I bet they'd think, what's the problem? Number 6, Matt Hardy. No shade on Matt Hardy here, but watching this clip back for this list was about as hard to get through as actually most in-ring mid-noughty segments in WWE, to be perfectly honest. Right, so Matt Hardy was feuding with MVP, but unfortunately both of them were suffering with injuries that prevented them from, actually wrestling. So they had to do other things. So they played games of basketball, they did some beer drinking, and then they had this infamous pizza eating contest. Watching Matt Hardy try and shovel as much pizza down his face as he can in 120 seconds is almost enough to put you off pizza for life. But it's pizza, so only almost. Number 5, the Boogeyman. He had goo coming out of his mouth and he ate worms that he'd sometimes let drop on his unconscious opponent on the floor. Next. Number 4, Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland. Did you know this spot happened in their Texas death match at Full Gear? I'm just slightly concerned it didn't get much coverage on social media. And yes, they both get a spot on this list because yes, one of them was drinking someone's blood, but it also took someone else to drip their own blood into another person's mouth. Right, confession time. As wrestling fans, because we're all marks, we've all done the Triple H water spit, haven't we? We've all been in the shower, careful, let some water go in our mouth and done the old That's exactly what Hangman Page did. Nice homage at Full Gear. It's just that it wasn't water, it was Swerve Strickland's blood. There's no gimmick here. He busted Swerve Strickland open and then he laid underneath him and he squeezed his head and in it goes. It's an image that will live me forever and it is worth a rewatch if you can stomach it. Number 3, Mae Young. I mean this in the nicest possible way, but when Mae Young returned to the WWF in 1999, she was pretty much up for absolutely anything. I mean, she was powerbombed off the stage through some tables despite her elderly frame by Bubba Ray Dudley in an orgasmic trance. She had, oh yeah, full-on sex with Mark Henry before giving birth to a hand baby, but the thing that earns her the bronze medal in today's list is the Bronco Buster she did to Eric Bischoff at Bad Blood 2003. Now, there's nothing overtly sexual or wrong with that, of course, but Eazy-E's bump was made a little bit more intense when the story came out that, well, she shoved some sardines down there to really enhance the experience. Eazy-E must have known something's fishy. Number 2, Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley has been good and bad for conversations about blood in professional wrestling, although it doesn't really matter because he doesn't care what we think, which is kind of fair enough. And I can see both sides. I can also see some incredibly bad faith takes who aren't happy that Jon Moxley's living his best life in AEW. And I love the man, despite the fact he may have made me look rather stupid at Double or Nothing all those years ago. But he does have a habit of turning himself into a human pincushion / blood water feature thing in many of his matches. It's his thing, isn't it? And I still remember sitting around a few months ago with my beautiful wife and my newly born son, who was probably only about 2 weeks old, watching All In, and Jon Moxley got into it with Penta, and then, well, he transformed himself into a human unicorn. Ugh, I love you, Jon, but you're bloody bonkers, you are. Number 1, Bastion Booger. Yeah, you probably guessed that this guy was gonna be number 1. I mean, his entrance theme was stomach churning. It was just like, oh God, I've repulsed myself already. Anyway, that would happen, and then this guy would come out. Nothing against the man behind the gimmick, by the way. He was a well-respected wrestling monk until the Church of New York got involved, and so Vince McMahon went, okay, fair enough, you don't want us to do that. He is not a wrestling monk anymore. He's more a guy who, yes, wrestles, but wrestling does kind of get in the way of his main passion, which isn't even eating food. It's more just sort of redecorating his face with it. He'll come out, he'll repulse the audience, and they'll all sit there and wonder, why am I watching it? Which is probably what you've been feeling for the last few minutes watching this list. But hey, ring the bell, subscribe, stick a like on, stick a comment down below, and I'll see you soon.